Black hair is very diverse and versatile. It can go from fro to sleek in a matter of hours, long curl to modern bob and even less, short locks to a fade, dreads to having it all go bald, weave to dyeing it pink, purple, green or blue. There really is no limit to what we can do with our hair, and I'm pretty sure we've done it all. In the 15th century, hair was used as an identifier, for example what tribe you belonged to or whether you were married. The most common style we still see today are Bantu knots. Coming back into style from the early 15th century, Bantu describes 300 to 600 different ethnic groups in the southern parts of Africa during that time. A Bantu knot is a section of hair twisted into a tight coil, wrapping it around itself. When taken out, the hair is usually curly and bouncy. This type of hairstyle was very common, as it was low maintenance and it could last a long time. Following slavery, white slave owners began dehumanizing black hair by calling it wool. They also took away combs and herbal treatments, forcing black women, men and children to use bacon grease or kerosene to keep their hair tidy and clean. On top of this, white slave owners began to prefer lighter-skinned, straighter-haired Africans, enforcing the colour consciousness that the darker your skin and the kinkier your hair, the more worthless you were. Following the emancipation of slavery, so began what Aaron Lynch calls the Great Oppression. Aaron Lynch was the exhibition producer of the Afro exhibition in Liverpool Museum. He explains that black people went through extensive methods to make sure that their hair was smooth and matched their white counterparts. This involved chemically altering their hair or applying a lot of heat to it. However, nowadays hair has reverted back to its original meaning of conveying wealth or being an identity of yourself. Even popular culture supports the individuality of your hair. For example, Solange Knowles explains "Don't touch my crown," referring to her hair as a culture, heritage and identity. In fact, many black women take on the approach that their hair is nothing to be surprised about or something to marvel at. It doesn't need to be touched or ruffled. Solange Knowles goes on to say that she will not regulate her blackness to comfort someone else. But why is black hair so different to European? And why does it curl, and how does it curl, and why do you have to oil it, and why can't you get it wet, and why do you put it in braids? Well, there's an explanation to all that. According to Andre Walker, there are 4 different types of hair, and each of these different types of hair would fall into different subcategories. For example, 1A hair would be straight, fine and thin, and it tends to get oily. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have 4C hair, which is kinky, wiry and has no defined curl pattern. A study completed by the British Journal of Dermatology aimed to find out the growth and morphology of curly hair follicles. They found hair curliness is programmed from the bulb. Using scalp skin samples from African, Guyanese and Caucasian volunteers, they observed them microscopically. They found that in the African volunteers, the bulb itself was bent into a golf club shape, as opposed to the straight shape in the Caucasian bulb. The curvature of the bulb was a contributing factor to the curliness of African hair. However, there were also other factors, such as the follicle shape and follicle size. The follicle shape determines hair texture, whether it being straight, wavy, curly, or spirally coiled, whereas the follicle size determines hair thickness. A follicle is the hair that has not yet left the epidermis, so hair that is underneath the skin. So they discovered that if the follicle shape was large and circular and the follicle size was small and circular, then the hair would be straight and thin. They also found in African hair that the follicle shape was a flatter circle, and the follicle size was a wider flat circle. The hair would be spirally coiled and thick. Although this type of hair is so nice, it also has its drawbacks, that being how dry it can get. Within the hair follicle, there is something called the sebaceous gland, which releases sebum. Sebum finds it harder to travel down curly hair as opposed to straight hair, which it does so very easily. In fact, the straighter your bulb and follicle, the easier your hair is to get oilier, which means you have to wash it more often. Because of the lack of sebum in their hair, African people are more likely to put other oils into their hair that are not naturally given to them. Some even complete oil treatments. Oil treating your hair simply means washing and conditioning the hair and replenishing the oils that you've already lost. However, this treatment doesn't have to happen every day or even every week, as you pose a risk of drying out your hair and even losing some hair. However, many black women say they wash their hair whenever they feel like it. There is no right or wrong way to wash your hair, as it's your hair and you can do what you want with it. Most of the time, we wash our hair on how the hair feels rather than how long it's been since we washed it. But once it hits winter time, it's a lot harder to handle African hair. Hair is hygroscopic, which means that it absorbs water from the environment. When it's warm and humid, there's no problem. The hair soaks up the moisture in the air and begins to rehydrate itself from the atmosphere, as opposed to the winter when the hair starts to dry up and shrink and almost does the opposite and emits its moisture into the air. 4A, B, and C are more likely to have curlier hair and have African descendants. That means the hair is more likely to get drier more quickly, which means they'll have to put extra conditioner and extra oils to keep their hair looking healthy. Okay, so now that we know the history behind hair and the science to why it's different, how do African women style their hair? First off, let's look at natural hair. Natural hair can be worn in many different styles, but I'll just split it into 3 categories. You can have additives in your hair, like weaves or braids. Some people even style their hair in different ways. For example, having dreadlocks or protective hairstyles. Some people have an afro.
People call me Tino. Right now, the hairstyle that I am rocking is an afro. It's just basically my natural hair, which I just twist and then let out. An afro is basically your natural hair just growing out. Some people like to shape it, some people just like to let it grow, but it is basically your natural hair growing out, the afro style.
In the 1960s and 70s, the civil rights movement brought African American communities together, which included an appreciation of black beauty aesthetics, as well as a rise in Black is Beautiful, the campaign and movement. Afro hair became a political statement. Whilst others wore their hair in support of those being oppressed, it became an identifier, a mark of a person who was willing to take a stand against racial injustice. The fro gained popularity and was a unisex hairstyle for the larger part of the 70s, although not without its stigma. A glamour staffer accepted an invitation to give a lunchtime talk at the New York City law firm Cleary & Glottip on the topic of what was appropriate to wear to work. When the first slide came up showing a woman sporting an afro, she explained that wearing a fro to work was a glamour don't. When the next slide showed someone wearing dreadlocks, she commented that dreadlocks were truly dreadful. She explained that it was shocking that some people still think it's appropriate to wear those hairstyles to the office, but those political hairstyles really have to go.
They're actually seeing that, afros can be professional. Afros can be beautiful.
Another way people style their hair is by styling it in protective hairstyles. This is Leanne, the founder of Maintain Organics, a hair care company that produces homemade organic hair products for afro-textured hair. Leanne is currently transitioning her hair. Transitioning is letting your natural hair grow out without cutting out the relaxed, damaged ends. Leanne began transitioning by chance. Suffering from postpartum shedding after her son, she decided not to cut her hair, but to grow it out and recover it. So, in turn, she stopped using relaxers, stopped braiding her hair, stopped weaves, and basically stopped manipulating her hair until it was recovered. After a 6-month break, she thought, why not just keep doing this? There's no point in putting back the damage that she'd worked so hard to get rid of. Instead, now she uses protective hairstyles. Protective hairstyles are styles that protect the ends of your hair so that they are not prone to breaking. Since the ends of your hair are the oldest and weakest, we need to take extra care of them. Protective hairstyles are so versatile. There is a whole community on YouTube that dedicates their lives to showing us how to do these. Another style of protective hairstyles are dreadlocks. Believe it or not, dreadlocks are so healthy for your hair. They're actually one of the most popular styles of protective hairstyles that black women use today. However, there is a stigma towards it.
My name is Pelagia Nyamandi and I'm a midwife.
So, what is the hairstyle that you have currently?
Locks.
What are locks?
It's when you twist your natural hair to to make it grow into long strands. Yeah. So you palm roll it. You pick a few strands and palm roll it, and it grows longer as it mats together.
Is that a type of dreadlock, or is that different?
Or you would call it dreadlock. I would have said lock. Or there's different nationalities who look on locks as, not the smartest, or associated with taking, some illicit substances, or conforming to some religion. But just start doing locks. It was a natural progression. I decided not to use chemicals in my hair. Then I cut my hair, so it came out natural. No, but basically people have just let me be with my own hairstyle, to be honest.
Although natural hair is very accepted in today's community, some women still love to keep their hair protected from the harsh weather. Many people often go for cornrows or braids or weaves. These are called additives. Some people don't have good experiences with weaves.
I can tell you one of the worst weaves I've had.
A couple of years ago, I had a weave put in, and it was probably the second time I'd ever had a weave.
And that was for my auntie's wedding in Zimbabwe, and I didn't want a weave, but everyone was having a weave.
And I wasn't sure on how to look after it, how to dry it, and I was going out with a friend of mine and we were going clubbing, and I thought, why not wash my hair? So I washed the weave, and in me trying to dry it really, really quickly, I thought, let me just run the hot hairdryer right down it. And as I was doing it, I was like, okay, this is all right. And then when I tried to dry the middle, what happened was the heat from the hairdryer got into the weave and burnt a massive hole into the middle of my hairstyle, and I was distraught. I had no idea what I was going to do.
I remember watching this lady put this hair on my head, and then I watched her try do what was supposed to be like a leave out, but then it wasn't a leave out, and I could just see my scalp, and then never again.
However, the cons of having natural hair is that it takes a lot of time to maintain. Between the oil treatments, twisting out, and the sheer amount of energy it takes to just maintain your hair, it makes sense that some people opt to relax their hair. However, not everyone relaxes their hair. Some people prefer to texturize their hair.
What's underneath the scarf? What do you have under that?
Well, I have to think about that because it changes all the time. At the moment I have it cut short, and I have it coloured and texturized. The difference between texturized and relaxed hair is basically in relaxing, you fully straighten the hair and you have a full length straight strand of hair. In texturizing, you get a softer curl. So where the coil is really tight in my natural hair, it is a softer coil in texturizing. It just means I can put a comb through it easier. For me, I'm not precious about hair being on hair on my head. I like change. And I'd like to, and cutting it for me gives it a fresh start. With my children, I try and impart a healthy attitude towards hair. It's a nice thing to have, but don't get hung up on it too much. I want them to be proud of how they can be with their hair, being African and being able to show it, and not being ashamed of it or trying to hide it away, but just to embrace their heritage and be able to be themselves and express themselves through their hairs exactly as they want to.
In 1877, child of a former slave, Garrett A. Morgan, accidentally found the chemical used to repair sewing machines also relaxed curls and kinks of natural hair. Relaxing means to make the hair go straight and relax, rather than being all tight and coiled. After trying out this chemical on his dog and then himself, in 1913 Morgan founded the G.A. Morgan Hair Refining Company and premiered his first product, G.A. Morgan's Hair Refiner. This hair refiner used something called lye, or a strong alkali, which can also be soluble in water. Dark and Lovely were the first company to produce lye relaxers commercially in 1971. Lye straightened the hair by weakening the internal protein structure of hair, loosening the curls. However, in the late 70s, women found lye was damaging and stripping their hair of the natural proteins, leading to breakages and thinning of hair. In 1981, Johnson's product company released a no-lye relaxer using calcium hydroxide or lithium. Despite the changes, a study completed on 23,000 African women showed women who used hair relaxing products were more likely to have fibroids. Not surprisingly, these fibroids were linked to chemical exposure. Some people speculated that the chemical exposure came through scalp burns from the chemical relaxers.
I mean, for the pros, it's always a very debatable thing, relaxer, because it has its pros, definitely. So for example, for people who have very, very busy lives and you don't want anything too heavy on your head, because sometimes weaves and braids can be quite suffocating, you will relax your hair. I have seen people, literally just the other day, I saw in Lidl, I saw the woman with the nicest relaxed hair, smooth, laid, you could tell it was healthy and long. But then the side effects are that people have simply not been able to take care of relaxed hair. So you wait your 6 weeks to relax it, but then within that time frame of the 6 weeks, you probably got extra frizz, your edges aren't laying flat anymore, so you've probably now added on top of the relaxer heat. And at that point, you've done more damage than you can even think of. The problem is with relaxers is you need to actually make sure that you know your hair and you take care of it. If you get a relaxer and you're lazy, I promise you that's the end of your hair, because you've just thought, okay, yeah, my hair is silky, it's smooth, it's flowing, it's blowing in the wind. Like, you've left it, like, that's it. But it's like, no, did you think maybe you have to condition it? Did you do a hot oil treatment? People just link all of that stuff with natural hair. But it's universal. We take care of our hair no matter if it's been chemically treated or not, but people never do. So then the relaxer ends up being more of a con than a pro.
However, it was too late by then. Having your hair treated became a prerequisite for getting a job or getting into a school. Pretoria High School for Girls was designated a white school during the apartheid era in South Africa, but was also one of the first white schools to embrace the new South Africa, the transition of a system of apartheid to one of majority rule. Malaika Mayo Ayo, a 17-year-old student at the school, remembers being told by a teacher that her afro was distracting others from learning. She was one of 100 women to protest against the school for allegedly forcing black students to straighten their hair. The Guardian reported on this story, while in Iowa recounted tales of when a student was pulled out of class and given Vaseline to flatten her hair, and a time when a teacher referred to Nelson Mandela and ANC as terrorists. They both explained how these stories show how many young women in South Africa's prestigious schools have been told not to be black.
The most accepted hairstyle in workplaces at the moment is anything that just keeps hair out of your face. I'm finding, because I work in a professional environment, that my afro is accepted and nobody says that it's unprofessional looking, whereas maybe even 10 years ago this would not be accepted. It would need to be braided or straightened chemically, basically making it look like something that is not my hair.
When I had braids when I was in school, I would have purple in the back, black in the front, I would have grey, and it was never a problem. It looked smart. I could tie it back. It wasn't in your face. It wasn't messy. It wasn't scruffy. It wasn't curly. It wasn't kinky. It was literally just braids.
Maybe because of who I am, I think appearance is not the first thing anyone should judge you on anyway. Your performance and the way you come across is much more important, and in a professional environment, that's what I try and give. Be professional, work to the best of my ability, deliver projects, work, do a good job, and that professionalism doesn't have to be defined by how my hair looks.
different kind of things. You come in with 18 inches going down, people will still look at you like, what is going on? So when you have braids, it's up, it's cool, it's not in anyone's way, it looks professional. You will still see a lawyer with braids, you will still see a nurse with braids, you will still see a high school student with braids. It's just one of those things that it just works in our movement, really.
Zimbabwe was a lot different, because you know what's socially acceptable and what isn't at different times, and when I worked there, I just conformed to what was the norm there. People relaxed hair, braided hair, put weaves in, and that was generally what I did. There wasn't really anything that was too way out. Okay, perhaps colour would have been frowned on, you know, colour that's a little way out if you're working in a conservative accounting firm or in a bank. And so I did stay away from wild colour, but I still was a little bit adventurous. I still pushed the envelope there in terms of what I wanted to do with my hair.
So for people out there who have no idea what to do with their hair, who have African hair and they're really unsure what to do, all I can say is just experiment. I have gone through 25 million hairstyles. I've cut it, I've grown it, I've braided it, I've dyed it, I've done everything to it. And you know what? You don't know what is good for you until you try it.
So for me right now, I'm struggling with my own hair identity, because having short hair, having a muscular figure, and being very strong and bold, it's already a label in itself. And you do feel moments of being very uncomfortable, and you feel very vulnerable. I would say own it in every moment that it comes.
You know, I am loving the current trend where people are transitioning back to natural hair and doing fantastic things with it. I think for so long our definition of beauty and glamour has been defined by long weaves and adding to our hair in order to make it look good. And I like the fact that we've come to a point where actually we found beauty in who we naturally are. I haven't felt like I've been prejudiced, anyone's been prejudiced against me in any way because of that. There is a curiosity, which I expect, and some people are brave enough to come and ask, and I take it as that. It is a much more open place to have the hairstyles that you want. I've seen people with dreadlocks, I've seen bald people go bald, and it's all okay. People tend to look beyond what does your hair look like for work, and the rules aren't as rigid here as they would be elsewhere. The very fact that you can cut hair and it grows again and it starts up again is just testament really that you don't have to be stuck in one place. We can change, we can do different things, and you don't feel like you must be stuck in this way to be seen in to be seen in a certain way. And I see with people, I looked at Michelle Obama and even news presenters, they have one hairstyle for 5 years. That's really unusual for black women to do that. But I think it's because of the expectation that you can't have change. People want to see you in a certain way, and I sort of feel sorry for them, because then you can't try new things. So I say go for it. People need to get used to who you are and the fact that you change, and don't let that change you.